With the price of mechanics nowadays, you about have to learn to build your own stuff. You about have to learn to work on your own engines and everything, man. I want to share some tips of a few things that I learned while rebuilding the engine in my C10. God is everything. Without God, I'm nothing. Let's get right into it. I got a few things written down right here. I ain't gonna lie. I got a little note sheet right here so I don't forget nothing. Let me just say this for the people who don't know. This is my 1983 Chevy C10. It has a rebuilt 350 in it with some Summit Racing flat top pistons, Summit Racing rods, stock crank. Still, like I said, still 350 cubic inches. Some DNA eBay heads, bunch of comp stuff inside of those heads. Elgin rod, however you pronounce it. And a Summit Racing AA02 cam. Showtime transmission, 2200 stall, 2800 stall, I can't remember. Not too big of a stall, 342 gears in the back. And it's actually a really fun truck. So for anybody who wanted to know, you know, how to rebuild your small block Chevy, this could probably translate over to some Ford stuff too, maybe some of it. But you know, rebuilding the engine is somewhat the same, you know. Not 100% the same, but somewhat the same, if I'm being honest with you. So let's jump right into it. One of the first things that I battle with, or that how should I say this? One of the things that I had to deal with, simply because I post a lot of stuff on the internet and different things of that nature. Guys are saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you need to do this, you need to do that. I say take that advice with a grain of salt. What I mean by that is take their advice, but then take the time to do your own research. Never just take what a guy told you off the internet and just run with it. Here's the thing, you can talk to a mechanic or engine builder who's built engines for 45 years or 30 years, as a lot of them like to say. They still don't know everything. So take their advice and then go confirm what they said. Don't just take a man's advice and just consider it law because you say, oh, he's been building engines for 30 years or whatever. Nobody knows everything. Sometimes people get complacent. You may be dealing with a mechanic who just got complacent and he just does the same thing over and over. He may say, oh, this is the only cam that'll work in that engine. It's the best cam. You know, when different cams and different things come out all the time. So do your own research and just go from there. You know, and an example I have is a high volume oil pumps. Guys are saying, oh, you got to get a bigger oil pan if you're going to run a high volume oil pump. It'll suck the pan dry and you're going to be out of the engine. It has now been about 3 or 4 months and my engine is still together, still running good. I've done burnouts, I've done quarter-mile runs, I've done 1/8-mile runs, I've done, you know, different pulls, just regular driving. Have not lost oil pressure yet, so I don't know where that came from. And the thing that made me not buy that bigger oil pan is I checked milling that makes the oil pumps. I checked their website and their website said that that was a myth. For the people that created the thing to say, hey, that's a myth, kind of made me want to dive into it. And, you know, which I know sometimes, you know, you can't necessarily trust a website either, but I decided to take my chance. And so far, it's been perfectly fine. Next thing is, man, GM has been making the small block Chevys for, I mean, years, brother. I don't even know the years, but I know they stopped. Well, matter of fact, they didn't stop in '87. A couple of the vans had 350 engines all the way up into the 2000s. The 350s have definitely made their run, but here's the thing, Chevy made some small, you know, changes, you know, one-piece seals, and I think some of the issues I seen with some of the blocks. Eventually, I think 86, 87, the blocks went roller. And once they went roller, they then had 2 different types of cam buttons and different stuff like that. And they don't give you any of that stuff. If you have a flat type of cam, you have a flat type of cam. You know, you may have a roller block, but you have to source everything. And I ordered the cam retainer plate or cam button, whatever you want to call it. And the first one I bought, it was wrong. I bought the bigger one, but I needed the smaller one. That was definitely one of my mistakes that I made on that end. Some of that stuff is going to require you to buy it and try it, unfortunately. I think another thing I had that same issue with was the timing chain. All the small block Chevy timing chains are not the same. You got a roller block, it's different, especially you go from a flat tappet to a roller cam, it's totally different. The timing chain is different. That's all I can think of right now. So we're gonna keep this ball moving. Next thing that I think of, and I understand the statement of fast is an opinion. You know, I can ride in a 400 horsepower car and it's still pretty fun to me. But with the way the world is and the way the internet is, you see all of these 1,500 horsepower builds and 2,000, 3,000 horsepower builds, and guys think that a 400 horsepower car isn't fast or it can't be fast anymore. So when I say this, take this as my opinion of fast. Now I say you don't have to build a 383 or a 388 or a 396 or a 406. You don't have to build those engines in order to have a fast truck or car. I'm going to be taking this truck out in the near future, doing some draggy tests with it and probably getting a few races in at the track or whatever. And you'll see that this truck is not by no means a 1,000 horsepower turbo LS or turbo small block Chevy or turbo big block. By no means is that. But this thing is still a fun truck. And I just wanted to let guys know that you don't have to build a stroker motor or, you know, 30 over pistons, 40 over pistons, 60 over pistons. You don't have to do that in order to have you a fun truck that will spin the wheels, that will get from here to there quickly. 350s are still a good option, and I put this 350 back together to show people that. And you know, I've posted videos and people have said, hey, that's pretty impressive. So I'm not done. I am working on the 383 though, to be honest with y'all. But for the people who aren't like me, you know, because I need speed. I'm gonna be honest. I need speed. I need a little bit of nitrous. I need a turbo, supercharger, procharger. I need all of that. But for the people who say I don't need all that, I just need something that sounds good. And when I leave, I just want to smoke it up. 350 with some good heads, probably a little compression bump, thin head gaskets. You know, whatever, combustion chamber on your head, 68, 64, 58, whatever. That 350 gonna do what it do. Trust me, I know. This thing is pretty rowdy. The next thing I got to say is rebuilding an engine is not really that hard. There are some tools you may have to borrow or rent or buy, and I recommend just buying them because a lot of the tools aren't that expensive. It's things like harmonic balancer pullers and maybe some jaw pullers, or could be torque wrench, or maybe just typical sockets if you don't have those, maybe wrenches, maybe, you know, different things that you may need along the way to make the job easier or do the job correctly. Now, taking the engine apart, if you really take notes on how everything came apart and how everything goes back together, and you're just really careful on how you're doing it, it's not that hard to rebuild an engine. Now, once you start getting into all of the filing piston rings and this, that, and the third, and you know, trying to check things, a lot of it is checking stuff, checking clearances, checking this, that, and the third. It is time consuming. It is not hard. It is very time consuming. And what I recommend is having parts. Having all of your parts, make sure you get everything that you plan on replacing, which a lot of times if you got a used engine, you can't necessarily predict what you got to buy, what you don't have to buy, because you very well may be buying, you very well may take a block apart and be buying pistons and rods. You know, you may be buying a crank, you never know. So I just say buy the things that you know you're going to replace. I say bearings, things like that. Just go ahead and have those things. Head gaskets, head bolts, rod bolts, whatever you're going to replace, just go ahead and grab them and have that stuff on hand so that the process can go as quick as possible. Because if you take the engine apart, you know, let's say 5, 6 months go by, you start to forget how things go. And let me say this also, put all your bolts in a bag together, all your rod bolts, crank bolts. If you can keep your main caps and all that in order, man, tape all that stuff together, put all the bolts that go in there back together. That's gonna definitely make it a lot easier. So take the time to label, take the time to put things back. If you take a bolt out, you can screw it back in, screw the bolt back in the hole so you know where that bolt goes. That's another tip. Another tip I got is if it's old or it's something that is hard to get to, just replace it. Simple things like freeze plugs. You know, there are some freeze plugs that you can't get to. You can get to the ones on the side of the block, but there's some on the front behind the, especially on the small block Chevys and small block Ford. There's some freeze plugs that bolt up behind the transmission. Bolt up in front of the transmission on the back of the block, and then there's some on the front of the block, and you can't get to them because of the timing covers and things. In that case, replace those. Rear main seals, replace those. If you're like me and you got a mechanical fuel pump, and listen, my mechanical fuel pump cost me so much headache. It was still pumping fuel. It was pumping fuel. It wasn't pumping enough fuel though. And it made me go down a rabbit hole, thinking I had a bad distributor, thinking I had a bad whatever. Thinking I had to get a bigger carburetor, which it does need a bigger carburetor, but this is a 600, but it has bigger jets in it. So, you know, it still does pretty good. But yeah, what was I saying? So yeah, like I said, my mechanical fuel pump cost me some headache. I would say, depending on how old your mechanical fuel pump is, mine was like 8 years old, but it was, you know, I guess it was fine on the stock 350, but I guess once I kind of beefed it up, it was like, oh, I don't know about this, buddy. But yeah, man, so if, like I said, if you know, working and, you know, replace things, you know, another thing I didn't replace was my water pump, but I was like, water pump is really easy to get to. It's 4 bolts, pop it off, you know, new gaskets, real easy. Anything that like I said, is not hard to get to, I didn't worry about it. Water pumps, I wasn't worried about it. Yeah, it could cost me coolant, you know, but I can't just drain the coolant in the jug and pour it back in. But yeah, like I said, simple things I didn't replace. I'm gonna give y'all one bonus. Here we go. A bonus is, so when I first cranked this truck up, right, it was not camming, it wasn't chopping. I mean, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't camming and chopping like I wanted to or needed it to. So I was like, dang, I was like, this cam sounded different in other trucks and cars. It must be, you know, the load separation. Load separation was 112. So I'm like, dang, it must be the load separation. And I was looking at videos on how to do the push rods, and let me just get to it. Before you put your intake on, go ahead and adjust those push rods, because you can reach your hand in there, especially on your small block Chevys and small block Ford. Go ahead and reach your hand in there. You can reach your hand in there and check, you know what I'm saying, you can get a better grip on those push rods. Versus me, you know, jumping the gun my first time doing it, put the intake back on and sealed it back up, which the little grip I had on the push rods, it was enough, but it wasn't quite enough, you know, so you really have to grip them if you got the intake on. So yeah, adjust those push rods before you put that intake on. That's just a little tip I got. But without further ado, man, let's get a little start up on the great Iron Man.